We know the pandemic has brought the live event industry to its knees, and we hope everyone impacted out there is doing as best as possible during these truly unprecedented times. This is our business and our industry, and we will come back better and stronger than ever. We are all in this together. The way that will happen is through new COVID protocols, technology rollouts, and new business operational models. Today, we are joined by 5 distinguished professionals and colleagues who are playing a hands-on role in ensuring that when our venues come online with events, they are presented in a safe and welcoming environment with new focuses, among them cleanliness and new technological enhancements. My name is Eric Bressler, and I'm Senior Vice President of Programming for Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle and the Oakview Group. And along with Nick Verowick, the Vice President of Programming for Climate Pledge Arena, we will serve as your host today for this panel. And we do want to offer a special thanks to CAPS Payroll for all their support with the IEBA conference and the sponsorship of this panel. Let's introduce our guest panelists. First, Don Graham, VP of Events for Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle and Oakview Group. Mel Raines, Executive Vice President, Corporate Communications, Community Engagement, and Facility Operations, Bankers Life Fieldhouse, and the Indiana Pacers. Mel does have the longest title in the history of the industry. Kim Stone, General Manager of Chase Center with the Golden State Warriors. Mike Platino, Founder, Food Service Matters. And Angela Miles Powell, Regional Vice President, Venues and Promoters Segment, Ticketmaster. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Eric. We appreciate it.
So I think to get things started, what I want to do is ask you all a question and have all of you respond. And again, in this forum, just looking for your perspectives as all of this has hit. But from the time that COVID first appeared and the industry shut down in March, what was your initial reaction and what steps did you start implementing to adjust your specific business operation? And so I think we'll start with Mike Platino. Mike?
Thanks, Eric. Well, I certainly think we knew we were at the start of something extraordinary. I don't know, looking back, if we realized the depth or the scope or the breadth of it. But I think we did what probably everyone on the panel did. You started talking to folks within the industry, right? We knew we had to have more conversations and get as quick of an understanding as we could about what the short-term impacts, what we thought they were going to be, and obviously start planning out. So I think it was a lot of phone calls, and it was a lot of offers to make sure that we were participating and we were there when different partners needed us.
Kim?
We had heard about it, Eric, and it was somewhere in the end of February. We had a company-wide meeting. It was just our typical weekly meeting, VPs and above, and the VP from Community Relations asked what were we doing to take care of people, to protect them, and I was like, wow, if the VP of Community Relations really wants to know what the plan is, like we've got to be on it. We were already doing the signage, the extra sanitizers, the hand wipes. We had increased our cleaning because that's what we knew at that time. But we probably tripled down on that, so much so that the game after that meeting, San Francisco Chronicle writer was here, and he jokingly referred to us as the Perel Palace because everywhere you turned, you could get some Perel. So we pivoted quick in that moment, and it's just a shame. I can't believe it's been 7 months ago. But we're all focused on getting out of this and making sure our arenas are safe for the return to live events, because we know I'm sure everybody is dying to get back in and fear the roar of the crowd and the sounds and energy you just can't get anywhere else.
Angela?
Yeah, I think like many of you already said, Kim and Mike, I think the initial reaction was, listen, we've got some pretty much short-term immediate needs for fans and for our clients to immediately get messaging out to fans, whether an event was postponing or rescheduling. Those were the most immediate needs. And are we making sure that fans have the right information and that we're updating events quickly and timely? As we know that it was a quick pivot to shut things down pretty quickly into March. And so there were lots of events and many of the venues that were on sale and were planning to happen within the next few days. So those were the most immediate needs. And then kind of like thinking long term, like what, we have some of these events, we clearly are going to be working with our clients to move them and to educate fans. And then what does that look like if you're going to have an event during this time, right? What does that look like? What are technologies and processes that we can put into place for our clients so that when they do and after, they pivot and move some of these events, what that's going to look like. So I think it was really about some short-term, immediate fan education, and then more into how are we going to address this and what technology should we pivot to?
Don?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. I mean, obviously my first initial thought was, I know that this industry would come together because that's what we're used to and that's what we do. So originally for me personally, I was traveling back and forth because obviously our Climate Pledge Arena is not open. So unlike Mel and Kim, we didn't have events to stop. We didn't have anything going on. So initially I was kind of commuting back and forth between LA and Seattle. And when everything hit, I stopped that commuting. We had some plans of traveling to other venues, like our industry always does. We always help each other out. So when someone's building a new venue, a lot of other venues offer up to have us come visit their venues to kind of take away some best practices and look and feels of some of the venues so we can put those into our venue. So some of that had to come to a halt. But again, the venues came back and said, well, let's get together and do it virtually. So we started doing that a lot virtually. And we started getting together still online and discussing best practices for opening up our venue when we open up in 2021. But we then started to get into the COVID discussions, and we started leading a COVID task force just in Seattle. And it made sense just to talk about it as an overall Oakview task force. So we got together with all of our venues and we sit and we share best ideas. And, I know we're all used to working 18 hours and working on weekends when pre-COVID. We're still doing that now because everybody's doing that, doing Zoom calls, sharing best practices, working on technologies, products, and solutions and studying that. So, the business transferred a little bit from doing it in person to online, but I still think we're able to accomplish a lot of things and communicate, be with each other still, talk to each other on best practices. And for me personally, that helped us get back to a little bit of some events with the NHL bubble. And obviously we had a group of us go to Toronto and a group of us go to Edmonton. So we were able to still help and work on some of the events. It was a big transition for a lot of people because it was different. You're working inside of a bubble, but big shout out to the team at MLSE and the Oilers Entertainment Group as far as keeping that bubble intact in those two venues. But that's what we do as an industry. We all help each other out, and I continue to see that happening every single day, especially with a conference like this.
Great answer, Don. Mel?
I think like Kim, we started hearing about it in late February, and just because of timing, we were in the middle of hosting the Big Ten women's tournament and the Big Ten men's tournament back to back. So we only had one Pacer game in like a 13-day period, which is sort of rare for us that time of year. And I felt like for about 10 days, I was running from a tidal wave. Like it was coming and you knew it was coming and you didn't know exactly how to handle it. So our company started getting, we don't work remotely very often, or before this, I would say. And so, we just had to get everybody ready to what we thought maybe for a week or two. And most people haven't been back yet, be able to work remotely with our CTO did a great job of getting that going. We canceled the Big Ten men's tournament 10 minutes before tip off of the second session. So I had a building full of food and Big Ten staff and a lot of other things to kind of, and our busiest month of the year. So we just, from a building perspective, had to get all of that together. And then we're on a construction project, a 3-year, $360 million construction project that was starting Monday when we closed on Thursday, which I'll talk more about later in the panel. But sort of, for us, it's just been a cultural shift moving to this virtual way of working, which I think will make us better long term, because we're very much a come to the office sort of company before this. But and so I think we'll have more flexibility going forward. But like a lot of everyone else just said, I think it's just changed how much I've never spent so much time talking to my counterparts as I have in the last 6 months, which has been great, not just on COVID, but on how we operate our business.
Appreciate all of your perspectives, and I know that everybody who's viewing and listening today will share those as well, because I am sure there are a lot of people out there feeling the same thing, and it's always nice to hear what everybody else is thinking, to your point of the collaboration and being able to talk to everybody. And thank you for your perspectives on those feelings. I want to transition now to really what is the subject to start, and that is COVID and health protocols and everything that has come out of this. I want to shift to Don Graham, and Don mentioned it. Don is leading the charge for all of the health and wellness and sanitation efforts related to Oakview Group, and Don was tasked and given the responsibility to lead the bubble with the NHL in Toronto, which he did unbelievable work. The success of the bubble has been written about, and it's a real testament to him and his team. But Don, maybe if you could spend a little bit here and talking about the experiences that you learned in the bubble in terms of the health and wellness, the logistics behind the scenes at the venue, and what you see being able to be implemented at venues and events going forward, and maybe some changes that operationally we are going to see going forward here as we come out of this.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Eric. And I think the biggest piece that I take away from this is, and again, I mentioned this before with OEG and MLSE on how they had to get ready for this. They were really notified only a couple weeks in advance, coming off of a shutdown of their buildings from February or March, and then transitioning into reopening again, obviously with no fans, but still having 12 teams with 52 people per team, media, just the NHL staff. I mean, each venue had 1,200 people coming through every single time there was an event going on. And some days we had 3 games, some days we had 2, some days we had 1. So obviously they have a huge credit to them, because they had to react pretty quickly and figure out a way to get some of the policies and procedures that the NHL had put down with their phase 4 protocols. And the NHL did it right. They did it right, I think, with their protocols that they set forth. There was a guideline that everybody needed to follow. And I think when I go back and think about it today, is it was an all-in buy-in from every single person that was in the bubble. And that's the most important takeaway that I've taken from there, is not only did every single department that worked inside the facility, between the food and beverage, the maintenance, the housekeeping, everybody bought in on the protocols, and everybody from the top of the NHL executives all the way down to the bottom of the housekeeper knew exactly what they had to do every single day. Because if there was one thing you couldn't do, if something went wrong, then the entire thing could be shut down, and it just wasn't what we were about to have happen. And we were living up to the Canadian regulations of what we had to do to keep everything intact. And there was a lot of eyes on us. So I think it was very important to have the departments buy in. And again, going back to the protocols that the NHL set up, it was the first time they were doing it. So when they wrote the protocols, they had a lot of medical experts weigh in, a lot of legal experts weigh in. And there were some gray areas. Of course, there's going to be gray areas, but they never wavered from their protocols. If there was a gray area, we all got together and we sat down and we talked about what the gray area was and how we can make sure we implement that gray area to the best of our ability. So to me, what I want to say to everybody on this panel and everybody that is listening to this is, when you have your protocols and you have everything that you set up, just stick to it. Don't waver from it. Make sure you stick with your protocols, because you wrote them for a reason, and they're meant to be used for every single person. So if you're going to mandate masks and you're going to mandate social distancing, make sure you're there enforcing that. And that's kind of where we came in as the compliance team and the sanitization team. We came in to make sure that the protocols were lived up to by every single person. And it was amazing how the players, the trainers, the equipment managers, the GMs, everybody there bought into the protocols and they lived up to it. And as you can see, they were able to raise the Stanley Cup in Edmonton with no positive cases. and everything came together perfectly. So again, I think the other thing is be flexible, because as we know with this virus, things change. Every single day there is something that is changing. We're learning something new. We thought something was happening, and then we had to kind of change. So be flexible. Stay with your protocols, but also be flexible if there's a time in the protocols that have to tinker just a little bit on how you implement those things. For us, I think it was just something that we really came out of it being very proactive rather than reactive. And I think the types of things we're going to see when we reopen our venues is a lot of times our staff, we used to talk to them and say, kind of just be in the background. Don't be out front. Don't be there like making sure you're impeding in the customer experience. Now I think it's more like we need to be out there and show that we're out there with sanitization crews, and we're out front and we're wiping things down before people ask us to. It's just something that we should be doing proactively. And you look at it from the NHL standpoint, people always said, why are you wiping the benches down in between periods? Why are you wiping the penalty boxes in between periods? Well, why not? Because we should have probably been doing that before. They're like, well, the players are sitting in the same spots, but you don't always know that. They're not always sitting there. A referee could have come over and maybe had done something and maybe accidentally spit into the players' benches. So why not just clean that and sanitize that in between periods? So I think you're going to start seeing those types of things happen. You're going to see locker rooms be sanitized more often. You're going to see just spaces that you need to do more with, because you want the players to focus on playing the game rather than them worrying about if the space that they're sitting in was cleaned or not. They should just know that and they can see the crew there doing it. And I think it's very important for that. You know, we just really love the fact that we were able to have that chance and take these best practices back out of the Toronto bubble and Edmonton bubble and take it to any of our venues that we're working in today. So you're going to see a lot of policies and procedures out there. We just need to make sure that we find out the right ones that can work for all of our venues, and kind of weed out the ones that are just there to make a buck. So I think we've been doing that with the experience coming out of the bubble, and been doing that with all of our venues inside the Arena Alliance.
Hey Don, I want to pipe in and ask a quick question. And all of what you said was super interesting and useful for the entire group and everybody listening. But one of the unique experiences, I think, on top of everything else that you went through, was your interaction with the players, and that's something that, you know, we've been thinking about the fans and bringing the fans back, but you've had some direct experience with dealing with the talent, so to speak. And I think we all know on this that talent can be pretty difficult to manage sometimes. Can you talk a little bit more about how your experience was there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, Nick. Thank you. You know, we always, and I'm actually wearing the shirt today. So it's the shirts that we bought all of our compliance officers and our sanitization officer and our chief hygiene officer. And we were known as kind of the black golf shirt crew that kind of walked around the venues, making sure everybody was compliant with all the policies and procedures. But you know, from the minute that the players walked off the buses and walked into the hotels that were inside the bubble, they knew that they were there for one thing, and they were there to win the Stanley Cup. So it was a little bit easier for us to know that we had the buy-in from them when they came on, where they basically just knew that we were there to help protect them, protect ourselves, and protect everybody else that was inside the bubble. So we had a lot of interactions. You know, we were making sure that whenever they came off the bus, no one could touch their equipment. Everything was brought in by them. They had to transfer it up to the hotel rooms themselves. A lot of that didn't normally happen on the roads. They had people doing that for them. So there was a lot of interaction with the players in that respect, just kind of going through the guidelines and the procedures, and then just making sure that they got their testing every day, making sure that they did their health screening. We used the Clear system. So they did a health screening every single morning, and then they came down and did a temperature check before they went to the practice facility or the game facility. So we had great interaction even in the restaurants, because there was only certain places that you can eat with inside the bubble. So when you walked in and they saw you walk in, even if they weren't completely sitting so close to each other, you can see them all of a sudden separate and go to that 6-foot distance and leave that seat in between. They knew it. You would walk by and they'd pull up their mask if it fell down a little bit, and they'd make sure that they knew that they were following the right policies and procedures, because the last thing they wanted to do was be that person that stopped the return to play.
Thanks,
Great
Don.
answer, Don, and obviously it shows tremendous trust that the players also had in the system towards all the logistics and also the staff there with yourself and the team. I want to throw it out to the panelists here. Does anybody have a question for Don in relation to his experience in the bubble and other matters related to the hygienics?
Donna, I have a question. What was your biggest surprise when you got there? I'm sure you spent hours and hours thinking through everything that would happen, but when you got on site, were there any immediate surprises?
Yeah, I think the biggest surprise is how much PPE we had to distribute. I didn't really think about it when we got there, that the amount of work it took to have all the elements that the NHL protocol set in place, between the masks, the hand sanitizers, the wipes, the sprays, just making sure that that got to all the facilities, because not only are you talking about all the hotel rooms, you're talking about all the gyms, you're talking about all the restaurants, you're talking about the practice facility that had 4 sheets of ice that you had 12 teams practicing at, that you had to outfit all the locker rooms with hand sanitizer stations. And again, I think Mel and Kim, you guys are aware of that because your venues were operating. We came off of a complete shutdown, and me not working in a venue for a little bit because leaving LA and coming to Seattle, we didn't have a venue. So I forgot about all those things that you have to think about, is making sure that you got all those places completely stocked with all the PPE gear, and the fact that people actually really used them. We took care of a lot of people with masks, mini hand sanitizer bottles, big hand sanitizer bottles, making sure all the machines were completely full all the time. It's a full-time job that I was not expecting when I first walked in there.
Thanks.
Great question, Mel. All right. Well, we've covered the cleanliness part, and certainly that's extremely important. But next up, we certainly need to focus on ticketing and ticketing operations. And for that, I'm going to throw it to Nick Verwick. Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I know prior to COVID, ticketing technology and ticketing in general has been a very important topic, and many venue operators and promoters were working with their ticketing partners on technologies like mobile entry, seat selection, among others. Starting with Angela, how have these topics continued to evolve or grow in popularity, if they have? And what other technology should ticket sellers, being the venues or the promoters, be seeking out or looking forward to as they make preparations to reopen?
Well, thanks for the question, Nick. Yeah, I think that which was one of the nice things is that we've kind of already started that digital journey and having lots of conversations with the clients about that digital and mobile technology. We kind of look at this in 3 different, like our tech pillars that we're looking at right now. And one of those are around social distancing tools, right? So you mentioned the seat map and seat selection, really looking at pod seating, whether we have, pods where fans can select seats for events that are kind of using the social distancing. And also really around timed entry, right? How do you manage crowds going into a venue with limited capacity, right? And to try to kind of keep those concourse levels and those areas around the door, kind of try to mitigate the amount of risk that's coming in through there. And really looking at contactless fan experience. And we're not talking about just scanning the ticket, but also, are you upselling merch? Are you upselling concessions? Are you doing some pre-packaging? We had leveraged that technology with early entry and some really nice things at venues, but really taking it to the next step. That was a lot about convenience for a fan, right? That had been a lot of focus of this digital, is how can I make it convenient and how can I make it easy for the fan? Well, now we're using that same technology to make it safe for the fan to attend, for our clients to use the technology. And really along the third one, it goes right into Don's conversation about protocols. It's about fan education, right? As part of this process. Really from the entire journey of when you put the show on sale to when they enter the venue, right? All of those communication needs to be about what does the fan expect. Lots of surveys that we've been doing as we've been discussing the return to live has been around what would make you safe, right? What do you feel safe? Why would you want to return? When would you like to return? And most all of those are around what are you doing to make it safe when they come to the venue? And understanding that process before they even cart a ticket is a really critical part. And then once they cart and purchase that ticket, what is the expectations when they enter the venue? it's something very critical. I think we've all, and lots of venues have some pretty great know before you go emails that they send out to fans. That is now more critical than ever when we start talking about what does it mean when I walk in? What do I expect? Can I? And to Don's point, you're going to see things that we typically don't see behind the scenes, or you typically don't put in a marketing email. You're going to be adding that information because that's what's going to make the difference between a fan clicking and carding a ticket to purchase during this time. And for a while, because, we see several different groups of fans out there. We have, what we consider our early returners, right? These are fans that buy right away. If you put a show on sale right now, even with social distancing, those are the fans that buy right now. But then you have some of those middle returners where they're thinking, well, as long as you've got some safety protocols, I feel like if there's not a surge in my particular market area, then I'll purchase. And then you have some fans that are not going to come back to live events until there's a vaccine. So are you managing those expectations of those different fan groups? Are you communicating in a way to them? Just because somebody's not returning right away to an event doesn't mean they're not reading your emails and your marketing about the events that are taking place right now, because that's going to help them feel like you care about that live experience and that you're going to make sure it's safe when they do come back. So those are where we kind of like our focus is. Thankfully, we were already down that path and really focused on it. And now it was just a pivot from convenience to safety.
Yeah, and you brought up a really good point there with the fan perspective and the fan education there. I think, in my opinion, all markets are different, and it's really going to be fascinating to see how every venue responds to their own fan base. And I think, throwing it out to the other panelists, what are you guys looking at in terms of with your ticketing partner and even your staff in general, the ticket takers, the guest services departments? What sort of things are you all looking at to kind of prepare for that moment when we do get to open and people start coming back to the building again?
I mean, I feel like this is going to propel a lot of us forward 5 years in, 9 to 12 months, from going cashless to all the things Angela just talked about, 100% mobile, ticket scanners that aren't manned with a human being, to touchless restrooms, which we had never really talked about before. But I think, there are certainly some teams and buildings that were leading edge on a lot of it, Kim's being one of them. But for those of us who maybe weren't in a hurry to do some of those things, I mean, I think we'll all be there a lot quicker.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, even looking at it, when you go through trying to eliminate as many gathering touch points as possible, even looking at potentially having the ticket reader be read inside of a metal detector. So that way you're already just kind of just going through and you're not doing another stop point. Like, I would love to see if that's the future, and maybe it's coming quicker where you're going through a system that you don't even have to take anything out of your pockets anymore. It's reading you as you go through, and it's also scanning your ticket at the same time.
One of the areas we're hoping is that, and Angela touched on the merch. Look, the hope would be that the concert industry embraces the opportunity to get a little bit more forward thinking with the merchandise and being able to pre-order your merch before you even arrive at the building, and that all of a sudden it's ready to go when you arrive, and taking that more that longer runway, as opposed to showing up and all of a sudden rushing to the top of the concourse because you want that one sweatshirt and the line is 9 miles long. But the idea of concert merch has always been sort of okay, let's see what we have left coming from out of city A as we enter into city B. And so the hope might be that the industry does get a little bit more detailed and planned out as far as concert merch goes and how it can be blended into the app and pre-sold.
Angela, well, thank you, Eric and Don, and Mel said it well. We're all pivoting what used to be like a long multi-year on-ramp for like mobile ticketing. We didn't even do mobile ticketing last year when we opened because the fan pushback. There are a lot of fans that were like, whoa, I want my ticket. Well, this is taking care of that. This is the compelling reason to change. But Angela, back to, I give you and Ticketmaster a lot of credit. Like you said, you've pivoted fast. You went to the pod seating. That was not easy to do. The timed entry is great. And then I've heard that contact tracing, you guys are, your manifests are somewhat helping with contact tracing. Now, maybe I'm taking liberties here with what I've heard and read in the media because we're not open and hosting events, but are there any insights there that as we all look to reopen, that you all have some capabilities or maybe some emerging technologies that will also help with that?
Well, I think that there's discussions taking place on that, but I think the concept of identity and making sure that you know who is attending the event has always been a critical and something that we probably, as an industry, to your point of, I want my hard ticket, I'm going to pass them out to my friends, I'm not going to go to a digital way of distributing the tickets, right? So I think that it's now more than ever when we start talking about understanding who's coming into the venue. Can be a part of that. I think that different, cities, states, and governments all have different protocols and whether or not that information can be shared. But I think that each of you and others on the call and others in, at this conference, we understand that, it used to be, again, a part of convenience of knowing, right? To market back to that fan. Great, thank you for attending our event. Would you like to see other events? We look forward to coming back. Was more of a marketing tool, but now I think you can use that as safety, right? And I think to a point of one of the things that we've seen really with our clients that have returned to some live events with a smaller number of fans, but still fans that have come into the venue and purchased tickets, was a lot of surveying after the fact. How was it? How did we do? What would you like to see more of? And I think that, again, understanding who's walking into that venue and who you can touch base with, I think will be critical. Because if you do need to, hey, to Michelle's point, Mel's point, I didn't like the restroom experience, or I didn't like the concession experience. Those are things that will give you true insight as to fans that actually purchased and attended the show so that you could make pivots to the next event that you have. So I think that the more information that you have about those fans, Kim, the more information that you can have that if it does, God forbid, there's something else that happens, that you would have an ability to go back out to that fan.
Yeah, we do that. What you said, Michelle, we've surveyed even in this time, and it's funny, you hit on the thing that was a little surprising to me is restroom capacity, and restroom management. So we were looking at $1 million investment just in that alone. And I would have, to your point, I wouldn't have discovered it. It's an insight from fan sentiment surveys. So good reminder for all of us.
Great. Does the group have any additional questions for Angela or any other comments on ticketing?
I guess I would have one question, Angela. Has there been groups that have approached you to do a package where it's ticketing purchase and then a COVID test? Because I know there are some things flying around out there that people are talking about, adding a COVID test inside the ticket price and then sending the COVID test to someone's house, and they have to kind of attaches that to the ticketing.
Well, interesting. I think that one of the things that all of us have, again, when we talk about being more creative, I absolutely believe that there'll be, I've heard some rapid testing as people are approaching. We're seeing temperature checks. We're seeing lots of protocols as fans enter the venue. I absolutely see opportunities to be creative. Again, this is about, if we have, as an industry, want to return to live events and we want fans to feel comfortable, we're going to have to pivot and make sure that we have technology and we are leveraging resources from sponsors or from fans or from municipalities and a lot of partnerships that we have out there to make sure that fans feel that way. So I do believe that we'll continue to be creative in making sure, and fans will kind of drive that, right? Fans will help drive that discussion because, again, it's about, if you put a show on sale or you're wanting fans to come, it's going to have to be really a dialogue between them as to what's going to make them comfortable to go and return to live. So I absolutely believe that we have to be creative and we have to keep everything on the table as a conversation.
Angela, I'm curious, going through all this with Ticketmaster and certainly the shows, adjusting, but what's been the biggest surprise from Ticketmaster's front in relation to the fans, and anything that has been learned from the fans themselves? Many have certainly asked for refunds, others have not. Just wondering, maybe something that's been learned in the fan interaction with the fans.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And I think that, we did a lot of surveying, we've been looking at over time, that would be fans that have purchased, pre-COVID, and then fans that have purchased events post-COVID into maybe that social distancing seating. No, one of the main takeaways has always been where we want to return to live. There's not this expectation as to when I'll ever go back. It's just when I'll go back. Right? There's not this expectation that I'm not going to attend live events, whether that's a sporting event or a concert event. That has never been really questioned. Pricing hasn't really been a huge motivating factor. It's not the expectation that you're going to have to discount pricing, right? It doesn't mean that you're going to not have to pivot a little bit on some pricing. And we've seen that with some of the pod seating, where you may have had multiple price levels, but may only have 2 for some social distancing seating. But there is going to be a return. Fans do want to go back. It varies by city and state, right? Parts of the country matter as to whether or not the type of an event matters. But, we saw a lot of creative, right? Let's take the event outside, where fans are more comfortable being outside. So you pivoted to, I might be a performing arts building, but I'm going to make this event outside, right? You saw the rise of pop-up drive-in concerts, right? I think, and I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit on this panel about programming, but I think that some of the things that we've seen have been really creative programming. There's probably an opportunity to continue some of that, right? Like maybe there is some more community stuff you can do. There's an alternative space at your venue that you can use for some of these smaller events that can kind of engage during times that are typically your higher volume or low volume at the venue, if you see an amphitheater season versus high-end arena, right? So I think that I've been really impressed that fans still want to attend shows. They're still very active in their artist communities, and they're still very, very pro, I want to go back to live events.
I think that's music to our ears. I mean, and having the survey, I think we all knew that or felt that way, but having the survey data to back it up is certainly encouraging as well. So, any other questions? All right, well, we're going to switch topics again. I'll throw it back to Eric to open the discussion on the effects and impact that we've seen in the food and beverage operations across the industry. Eric?
Thanks, Nick. Certainly, when all the fans come back, we do want them to eat. We do want them to drink and enjoy themselves at our safe venues. And I want to throw it over to Mike Platino with Food Service Matters. Mike, you've been at ground zero with many venues and teams, facilities, looking at all of what food and beverage is going to look like coming back in terms of the logistics, protocols, health standards in city to city. Can you let us in a little bit on how you've seen this go through and what you've been experiencing, and also, most importantly, what changes you see coming to our venues?
I sure can. And pleased to report, or pleased to say that I was at a live fan event just last week at MSU. So we had 12,000 people. And I think, as Angela noted, where you live and where your venue is makes a huge difference. If I didn't know better, the fans at MSU, it was life as we knew it. So it is going to be interesting geographically, depending on I think how folks react. But our point of view on food and beverage from the beginning was probably a mix of reality and optimism. Right, the reality that we're going to have to really amp up the messaging and the optics to make sure that both fans and employees, right, were assured that they were going to come to a clean, sanitized facility. And that was interesting, being in an industry where we served 100 million people a year, really without incident. So food and beverage was a very safe, regimented industry to start with. So, we understood the optics side of it, but candidly, track record, pretty rock solid. Hard for probably of any of us to name a mass event where there was a foodborne illness type situation. So, but we matched it up with our optimistic view, and that we normally have, that this was going to be, and I think, Michelle, you said it, an accelerant for us. It was going to push things forward that, for whatever reason, weren't moving, in our view, fast enough. And cashless is certainly top of the list. We knew it worked. We knew it drove revenue. We knew it sped up service. We knew it was safer. We knew it saved a lot of money. But at the rate we were going pre-COVID, we were going to spend 10 years getting our venues to fully transition. For a lot of, I think Kim mentioned what the fans want, or the notion of ticketless. This is giving everyone a wonderful opportunity to do something for the fans. And at our first cashless event in Mississippi just last week, not a glitch, not a peep. Just that's the way it is now today. So we're really encouraged on some of the brush fire events we call them. The mobile ordering. A chunk of the industry in food and beverage that's had a 1-3% adoption rate for 10 years. We've been trying to figure it out, right? Has it been signage? Has it just been the way we've been doing it? Early indications, and we're real early now, but that 1 or 2 or 3 is 15 and 20% now. If we could continue the transformation of having a fan treat a concession stand as a fulfillment center, not an order fulfillment center, we can dramatically change what happens now at concession stands, where we know we don't move lines fast enough. So seeing the embrace of technology, which is probably contributing 30-40% to the food and beverage story, right? If we can take away the cash, if we can put the ordering in the hands of a fan, it starts changing the other dynamics, the other pieces of food and beverage. We're seeing the explosion of grab and go markets, and some of that's being driven by the fact that they were already starting to roll. But the notion that we need to find ways to operate venues with a lot less staff than we did. Staffing was tight before COVID, and now it's twice as difficult to get staff to come work. And that was one of our learnings just last week, that the numbers of folks who didn't show up was probably double what we thought it was going to be. And then I think there's a little bit of a simplification going on, that we knew what items always sold, but over the years I think there was just creep in the menu. So watching now as we scale that back, but just really target the offerings a little bit more to, once again, how do we speed up service and really hit the key pieces of the fan experience. And then in the case of the collegiate world, we're seeing the rapid deployment of alcoholic beverages, right? Stuff that was normally relegated in the college world to tailgates. Well, tailgates are gone now. So it became another reason, and one of those things that was happening anyway, but now it's happening, or it's happened overnight almost. So we think, and hopefully, it probably runs across all the different sectors, that we are going to wake up and be better, stronger, and certainly more efficient on the food and beverage side. It's just going to take us a little bit to get there, and figuring out what now are short-term things you have to do today and what's going to stick is probably one of the biggest questions that we keep asking ourselves. What's really the new norm, and what's what we have to do today, and are we going to wake up in a year and a half and be really back in 80% of the routine that we're in before? So if anyone has the answer to that question, I'm all ears. So hopefully that helped.
Great synopsis, Mike. Does anybody have any questions for Mike?
Mike, are you seeing?
Sorry, go ahead, Kim.
Sorry, Don. Mike, are you seeing a move toward more packaged products?
I think right now we are, right? So everything, we operated full-blown concession stands, full menus at MSU last week. The premium operations were fully open, plexiglass and food being served, but otherwise the buffet that was there last year is the buffet that's there this year. On the concession side, everything was in a container, a hinged container, not necessarily sealed. So yes, but I think a couple of months ago, or for folks who are a little bit a few months away from maybe having fans in their venues, I think there's a little bit of a notion that we really have to just serve 3 or 4 packaged items and not veer. So I think we're seeing different degrees of that right now, you know, everything is in a container, which, you know, there's no open boats right now, but aside from that, I think it's going to wind up getting pretty close to normal.
This is, Mike, this is a purely opinion question. So,
Yep.
so I know there's a lot of talks out there about how food and beverage could be served. In my opinion, obviously for us, you know, we are sports and entertainment venues,
Yeah.
but a lot of our venues are focused on music. A lot of music events don't work unless you're at 100% capacity. It's either because of the vibe or financials, or just because the artist won't play unless it's a full house.
Yeah.
So we know that the virus is very airborne. We know it's a very hard struggle to get good circulation in a large square foot seating bowl. So there's been conversations out there about creating food areas so that when you're sitting in the bowl and you're watching the show, you keep your mask on and you're sitting next to somebody. But if you want to go and have a beverage or eat, you go to a certain part of the building where they potentially do more circulation, different filters, just a different atmosphere to control some of the airborne things that you can go and eat and drink. Have you talked about that or discussed that potentially that could work, where you're taking a seating section or a part of the concourse and those are designated food and beverage areas?
We haven't been involved in that, but it's interesting you mentioned that, because we had a couple of different calls or conversations about that exact point of our, you know, right now we have 3 venues that are in some form of fans either have returned or they're coming back the next game, right? Nashville, if things start picking up in the right direction there, certainly New Orleans Saints, right? So we're right on the bubble, if you will, on that. But we have not been part of a discussion in any of our venues or with our partners about dedicated areas. It's been focused on logistics, on premium, on suites. How do we serve a premium suite product in today's world and what that looks like, but not on dedicated areas.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great answer, Mike, and appreciate all that insight into what's happening in food and beverage. It leads into, after everything all we've been talking about, is the facilities themselves. I want to look to Kim and Mel here, because certainly they both have unique situations. Mel, in Indianapolis at Bankers Life Fieldhouse, you've been going through a planned renovation, adjustments along the way. Kim, you have celebrated a 1-year anniversary for Chase Center. And I think we'd like to throw out to both of you to maybe talk about the impact that all of the changes and the adjustments that are being made coming out of COVID, how both of you are looking at this for your respective venues and the adjustments that you are having to make as we come back.
Thanks, Eric. I'll start it, Kim. So when this happened, we immediately looked at it from 2 lenses. One is just a pure construction perspective. We were about to start the next Monday with a big part of our first phase, which is our biggest phase of construction. And we didn't know if construction sites would be allowed to stay open. So I'm sure Don was dealing with that, and you in Seattle and other job sites like Belmont. And would we be able to get the people and supplies that we needed? So we did a 2-week pause, and it became clear that we were going to have to make adjustments to the first phase if we were going to open back up on October 1st for the NBA, which is now in hindsight rather naive. But we have been able to extend and do the entire scope since we have till December. So we were looking at it that way. But then immediately when we adjusted some things, it was, you know, what is the science telling us? So we were on a whole bunch of calls with you know, GMs from other teams, from Oakview Group. The league, you know, was hired an industrial hygienist and others. And it's been fascinating to me how much the science has evolved. When we closed, I had the health department commissioner really helping us every step of the way to try to have this tournament safely. And the conventional wisdom at the time was, you don't want to wear masks. Don't put your people in masks. Well, obviously we've come 180 degrees in that. And when we all first closed, if we were to have reopened quickly, I think we would have spent millions of dollars on things that wouldn't have made sense. And so we now have had the time to take a look at those things. So we've gone to where most of phase one, a lot of it is premium, which is very high touch usually. It's now touchless. So it's a complete departure from what we would have done a year ago if we had renovated, whether that's in the restrooms. We were going to refillable sodas in some of our clubs. Well, that's the day of the refillable soda has died at Bankers Life Fieldhouse, so those are all gone. Door handles, we looked a lot at materiality at high touch areas and where we may change things to be antimicrobial. And then, you know, there was a minute where people said, well, you don't want stainless steel in kitchens because it'll stay on stainless steel longer. Well, I also didn't want to renovate a kitchen that needs to last 25 years with something that would break down in 2. So we sort of didn't listen to some of those things and said, to what Mike was saying, they clean these kitchens constantly if they're doing their jobs correctly. And so we didn't do some things that we might have otherwise done. And we've been doing a lot of fan surveys. So what do our fans expect? We did a round in April and July. I'm waiting on the results from our September survey, but it matches what everyone's been talking about. They expect to have, you know, a really high profile where we are all hiding our cleaning staff before. They'll be in bright uniforms, cleaning, you know, very front of house constantly. They want to be spaced. I'm renovating a building. I'm not building a new one. So the space I have is the space I have to get people in and out, but we're gonna look at it pretty scientifically and how we can space them out into different places we don't open up very often, stairwells, but we'll do those things. And then, you know, meeting the NBA's requirements, which our first event is not likely to be an NBA game. We're looking at some other events that could be in before. And so we've got to not rely just on the leagues to provide guidance, but we've got to come up with our own, which I think we've got a good plan, and we've been collaborating better with the other buildings more than ever before in terms of sharing best practices. And you know, Kim was nice enough to read my 80-page plan and sent some really great feedback back. So that's kind of where we are in Indy.
And Mel, you've done a great job. You probably had it harder than most of us because you were about to literally go into construction and had to pivot. So kudos to you. I know it hasn't been easy in the conversations and your 80-page plan. Your fans in Indiana should feel very good about coming to your field house. In San Francisco, the nice thing is we pivoted too, but we're state-of-the-art facilities. So, you know, when you spend $1.6 billion, you have a lot of the new things, and we were the new shiny toy. So, you know, our HVA system was already using MERV 14 filters. You know, the recommendation is 13 at least. And so we come with some really built-in advantages. The cashless. Mike was our consultant on our food and beverage and created an outstanding partnership with Bon Appetit. Plus, we're the use of Square for our POS, and they are very nimble and have shifted to meet the cashless. So we just have some inherent advantages just because we're new. And it was built here in the Bay Area where convenience and using everything mobile is what they wanted anyway. But that being said, we probably have one of the highest, most difficult hurdles to overcome here in the Bay Area, just in terms of the extremely conservative approach that is being taken by our health officials. And so therefore we have a mountain to climb. So our focus, we are going to probably invest another $3 to $4 million at least. I mentioned the bathroom technology. We are doing a redesign of our Star Campus. We have listened to the promoters who have said that they're going to most likely want the local tour separate from the national tour. We have heard about separate catering. We've listened, and we've really gone in, and we were going to do some redesign to our Star Campus, which is our dressing room corridor anyway. And so everything's going touchless. That was, you know, sort of dumb luck that we're able to do that in back of house and front of house. Everything that has been said here. We were touchless in many of our bathrooms, but now we're going to go in all of them. But for us, because of that high bar that is set here, we are looking at a testing plan and a testing protocol, and which means 18,000 fans and our, you know, 1,000 employees will get tested before every game, and that's pretty bold and pretty innovative. But a little context is important. Joe Lacob, our owner, has his master's in epidemiology and public health, and then he got his MBA from Stanford and became a venture capitalist who was specialized in the healthcare field. So he is uniquely positioned for this situation, and he has been very much an advocate at the league office for the fact that we're probably going to live with this, and testing is probably going to be part of it till we get to a really good vaccine. So therefore, that's what our focus has been, and it's been phenomenal. It's been amazing. It's very unique. It's a high challenge. Dawn, I'm going to call you about Clear. We're talking with them, but the ability to verify identification and make sure that the test results are in Clear, and then the guest would walk up to our venue, scan their QR code that says they're COVID free, and then they would come onto our facility. That's just what we have to do because of the situation that we are in out here, and that's okay. We can, and we're fortunate to be able to do that. So that's our focus. We're a barely used facility, less than 6 months. I always refer to it as parking your Ferrari in the garage. It's not what it's meant to do. It's what we've had to do. So I can't wait to get it back out and rev the engine and get it back going, because that's what our buildings are meant to do, is to have heavy loads, to be stressed. So we'll end up recommissioning our building, and we've taken this time to finish our massive punch list that comes after construction. I'm sure Mel's got a punch list. It'll go into your next year anyway. But what I do know is I want to echo what's been said here is just the collaboration, and I call it crowdsourcing, that is happening for how we're going to get out of this has been phenomenal. And I'm just so thankful to be in this industry. It was already an industry with some amazing professionals, experts in the world in what we do, and just really good people who want to help each other get out of this. And so I look forward to being able to visit all these facilities and have you all come visit ours, hopefully in the next 12 months at least. Hopefully before then, but we know we've got some work to do.
I think that's truly a great way to end this panel. Kim, terrific words, and I'll echo the message to everybody who's listening today on this, that we're all in this together. If you haven't talked to somebody in a little bit and you miss them, reach out to them. They'd love to hear from you. Everyone wants to talk about what's going on, lean on each other. We're all in this together, and certainly today you've had the chance to hear from the experts and learn a lot, and we're greatly appreciative for everybody joining today. And on that note, we hope you stay safe, healthy, happy, and we'll see you soon at events. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you, everybody.